Small Business Resource Network, or SBRN, is a network of professionals who provide services to the business community. And we are also an affiliate of the Florida Small Business Development Center Network. So it makes for a great partnership between the SBDC and the SBRN. I'm Nancy Boyle. I'm the director of the Small Business Resource Network. And just to give you a quick plug, our members are accountants, business attorneys, commercial lenders, commercial insurance agents, business consultants, a variety of government and nonprofit organizations, as well as some select corporate members. All of these folks, these members, have been vetted for their experience. So there's a high level of confidence in clients accessing our website and accessing our professional members. So if you are interested, please visit our website at www.sbrn.org. So before we actually launch the presentation, a couple of quick housekeeping items. If you have questions during the presentation, please type your question in the questions section of the control panel, and we'll address those questions at the end of the session. And I see actually a question here from Janet. Am I supposed to hear you? Yes, Janet. Can you not hear me? If you will type yes or no in that question, we'll make sure that we're not muted or anything else, okay? So questions in the question area. Also, today's presentation is being recorded, and at the end, you'll, at the end of the presentation, after everything is over, you'll be getting an email with an evaluation form. We would really appreciate it if you complete the evaluation. And also a link to today's presentation so you can review it. If we go too fast on something, or you missed something, or you just want to check it out, you'll get a link so that you can review it again. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Our presenter today is Doug Wilder, and Doug is the owner of Wilder Business Success, Inc. Doug has been a business executive and private coach for more than 26 years, and he particularly likes to work with honest attorneys who want to make boatloads of money. But if you are not an attorney, wait, there's more. He also works with business leaders who want to do better and you know, overcome some of these challenges that we're having between the whole virus, etc. So whether Doug is speaking to groups or working with teams or coaching on one-to-one, he helps each client's business get better sales, better relationships, and folks to be better themselves. One of Doug's claims to fame is he is called fire prevention. He can help you if you're in a situation where you have an employee that, you don't really want to fire, you'd really like to resurrect, but you're not quite sure how to do it. Doug can come in and put out that fire and really build that relationship, okay? He's done a lot of speaking. He speaks on topics including marketing, de-stress tools, setting bold goals, better communication, delaying procrastination. Clearly, you and I need to talk on that one, Doug. Team building, and as I said, employee fire prevention. By the way, a fun, Doug can often be seen at the San Marco Theater and Grill with the once famous jazz singer Dot Wilder. Guess there's a relationship there. So without further ado, let me turn this microphone over to Doug Wilder, and let's see how we can Zoom better, okay? Take it away, Doug.
Thank you, Nancy. Wow, this is exciting. It's exciting to talk to the SBRN folks and anybody tuning in because I think we've seen a change lately in the dynamics of networking. And so I've experienced that. So I thought it'd be good for us to have a discussion about that. What I think we want to talk about first is why is networking important? And so I'm finding that many professionals, business owners, they built their clientele based on networking. That's, you know, I define networking as developing relationships with other people, with enough people by helping them get what they want, and in turn, you will get what you want. And so, yeah, so finding out what other people want is critical. And the way that can best be done is by deep conversations. The difficulty with the COVID pandemic is we haven't been able to have those deep conversations, particularly the one-on-one conversations. So, before I used to say that if your networking is not working, then you're not working at networking, which is a cute little ditty, but it used to be true. Now, if your networking is not working, it's probably because you're not able to go out and meet people. So a lot has changed over the landscape. So we want to take a look at and say, all right, what's next? How do we make this? How do we grow your? How do you have networking grow for you? And one of the things in looking at the history somewhat lately is that in-person networking events have been, for the time being, replaced by Zoom. Pre-COVID, we would meet people maybe using Zoom on a long distance call. I've been meeting somebody in Denver for years with Zoom, but then we find out that that's no longer possible. We weren't doing, very rarely were we doing networking by Zoom before. So, and by the way, when I'm using the term Zoom, I'm meaning any type of audio video conferencing by whatever platform, whether it's Skype, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, or GoToMeeting. Any one of those, I just call them Zoom for ease. Zoom is such a great name too. So, at first, during the pandemic, Zoom was used for transferring information. I don't know if you remember that, but when mid-March, when the meeting stopped, at first we would go on Zoom and we would hear messages about what the SBA was doing. Nancy, you were very much involved in all those applications for loans and that was it. So all the Zoom meetings that we were going to at that time were so that you could receive information. In most cases, the audience was muted, and so the speakers would speak to the audience, but there was very little interaction. Might be interaction on a question or a chat, but the other thing was that on Zoom originally, there were a lot of times you couldn't even see who's in the audience. So it's really not an ideal networking event if you go and you're not seen or heard. So then later networking started to return to Zoom, and many businesses still needed to find clients by developing relationships. So networking requires its own set of instructions, is what I found. So I've been creating some instructions for me to follow. And so I thought I might share those with you today. Is that okay, Nancy?
Yep, I think that's great. So let me ask you this, Doug. All right, you've got instructions, and what do you do before the Zoom call? I mean, I go in, I set it up, and I invite the people, and then boom, we get to go. Well, I'm sure there's a more effective way to do that. So let's start with, what do you do before the Zoom call?
All right, great question, because I think there's a lot that can be done before the Zoom call. I think the first thing is to remember that your overall purpose of networking is to meet people one-on-one. And I think once you start to, once I start getting that into my thick skull, that I'm not here just to receive information and I'm not here just to see who's here, but I'm thinking about who can I have a one-on-one meeting with. And by the way, the one-on-one meeting could be in person, it could be by Zoom, or it could be by phone, but it's somehow, or even by email, but somehow if I don't follow up with somebody, probably there's really no deeper relationship being developed. So that's the first thing. The second thing is set some preliminary goals for the call. So sometimes I'll say, okay, I'm going to follow up with 3 people that are on this call. So if there's 50 people on the call, then I'll say, okay, which of the 3 that I can have that I'm interested in finding out more about, and not necessarily that they'll become a client, but that I might be able to develop some relationship with them. If I don't set up that goal, then I can sometimes coast right through a meeting, get through it, and then say, oh, well, so that was nice, but it didn't help my networking. So goals, and goals are best constructed if they're action oriented, something that you have control over. So the third instruction with the pre or the before the Zoom event is determine the parameters of the scheduled event. So is the call for networking, or is it just an exchange of information? How many attendees are expected is another really great question. Who will attend, and what are their demographics and their psychographics? What are they, if you are the, what's the age group? What's the what's their profession? All those questions might or might not affect why you're networking. And the psychographics, are these people that are forward thinking? Do they want to go out and have a beer? Is it, what turns them on? So so you usually find that information. Also, will the attendees be unseen and stay muted the whole time? That's a really great question. Who are the featured speakers? There are questions you can usually ask the organizer to find out the answers to these questions. So, and from that, and from the organizer's answers, you can then discover, okay, this is going to be a good networking event or not. So, and the fourth instruction I have for before the Zoom event is, if possible, research the attendees and consider adding them to your LinkedIn connection and to your database if you think that they will be somebody you want to have a further discussion with. Some scheduled Zoom meetings have the list of attendees, perhaps on a sign-up program like Sign Up Genius, something like that. And if so, I recommend researching the attendees and consider adding them to your LinkedIn and connections and to your database if you believe that developing a relationship with them would be advantageous. If you're going to connect with them, I suggest you add a note to the LinkedIn request. And by the way, I recommend that you always add a note to, whenever you do a LinkedIn request, to add a note. And the note could say something like, hey, John, I see we are going to be on the Zoom call tomorrow. In the meantime, I wanted to become a connection with you on LinkedIn. And just something as simple as that. And that way, they understand that you're just not somebody out of the blue, that you actually do have a connection with them. The fifth instruction is, in many instances, it's important to pre-connect with the leaders and speakers on the scheduled Zoom call too. So, for instance, if there's a national speaker who's going to be coming into your group, then it's sometimes important to either pre-Zoom link in with them, or otherwise ask them a question or welcome them to the group. So it's somehow making a connection with the speaker. So I always think that that's a great idea, and most speakers would be willing to know. They want to know somebody who's in the group if they're not familiar with anybody, and so maybe other than the program chair who maybe brought them in. So you can actually then have them, start a conversation with them ahead of time. And then there's 5 marketing questions that I ask myself before any networking event. and by setting up your marketing plan, the 5 questions are, the first one is, who am I? So if you understand what it is that you're providing, what's your service, what makes you unique. The second one is, who are they? What's your target market or target markets? I usually recommend 2 target markets. The third is, what am I going to say? What's my short introduction? If you can get something down to 10 to 12 seconds, you might be able to just pop it in there and build intrigue into your self-introduction. And the fourth one, the fourth marketing strategy or question you can ask yourself is, where are they? So, how, is this a networking event? How am I going to go into this networking event? All that. So if you create that strategy ahead of time, which includes the goals and how do you sort people through it. And I'll talk more about sorting later. And the fifth question is, how do I get commitment out of people? How do I get them to make a decision? The decision might be to link in with you. The decision might be that you're going to meet one-on-one. The decision might be that they might be able to refer business to you. So, so there's lots of commitments that you might get from somebody, but if you don't get a commitment, you really don't know where the relationship is going. So I think that's an important one. So those are the things that I think are important before the Zoom event. Does that make sense?
It does. So, okay, now we've prepped, we're ready to go. We're ready to go zooming along. So what are some of your tips for during the Zoom call?
Okay, great. I've written those down too. These are things that I think are important during the Zoom call. The first thing is, remember your overall purpose of networking is to meet people one-on-one. That sounds very much like the first instruction on the before the Zoom call, and it is. The idea is know what your overall purpose is, and if your overall purpose is to have better relationships, then during the call, make sure that you focus on who is it that you might have a better relationship with. So I think the first thing is to scan the room. Sometimes in a Zoom call, you can see all the different people and their names usually are in there. If their names aren't in there, that might be a reason to get in touch with them to help them put their name in. But the idea is just if they're incognito, then you might say, hey, I didn't see who you were. Can you reveal yourself? Are you ready to reveal yourself? And it might be fun, might be funny. So as you're scanning the room, sometimes it helps to take a photo of everybody who's there so you can later look at it specifically and see who's there. Or sometimes I write down who's in the room, and then I start making notes as to which is another thing I think is important is to keep notes as to what people are saying, so that way when you do contact them, you can talk about specific things that they might have said. And the other thing I'm finding is that it's important to, I'm calling it be attractive. I'm not sure what the right term is. I couldn't find the right words, but for myself, I just said be attractive. You will have more success if your overall image is what you want to project, and it matches the people that you want to see and hear. So, for instance, if you want to project a positive image, upbeat, be optimistic. Don't be down in the mouth, and sometimes it's just a decision. Okay, I'm going to be optimistic, and what happens is you start to pick things up. You start picking up your energy and being and trying to be exciting. So I have to pick myself up all the time. So the idea is to if you want to be laid back and cool, then be casual. So your attitude comes across in your comments, your gestures, your expressions, your nonverbal vocalizations, such as laughter and grunts. Oh, yeah, yeah. And it's just all these little comments that you might make, they're picked up on Zoom. And so make sure that they are good, positive grunts. So think attractive, look attractive, and say attractive things. So that's my concept for being attractive. And the other thing is, I think it's important to be memorable. Particularly if in your self introduction and your comments or questions that you might ask good questions. If you're asked to give questions, be careful of the comments and the commentary that goes along with it, because if you come across as monopolizing the talk or the conversation, what happens is it may do you more harm than good. So be aware of the clock. Be aware of how much time you have. And so if you're speaking to is to inform, be sure to make a short, at least attempt at being inspirational and entertaining. So I just think it's important to have the audience enjoy what you're talking about. So I think those are important aspects. And I've seen some people do that very well, where they'll have some great conversation to talk about, but they will they'll throw in something that is something that's funny. I've been analyzing what's funny because I need some help with that. And so one of the things that I'm finding is that if something that's funny is always something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, that it violates the expectation. So you're expecting somebody to say something and then they go completely somewhere else. And as long as it doesn't hurt somebody's feelings, then that can be funny. And so I guess the point is that if you're going to be funny, make sure it doesn't hurt people's feelings, because on these Zoom calls, you really don't have a second chance usually to go up to somebody and say, hey, I apologize for what I said, because once it's out there, and it's more difficult on Zoom to take it back. So be memorable, be funny, and yet don't be hurtful. And you also might want to offer, while you're online on the Zoom call, to offer follow-up meetings or some kind of engagement. So, to the whole group, you may say, hey, I'm open to meeting one-on-one with anyone here. If anybody would like to meet one-on-one, let me know, or put your email address in the chat box. So you can actually offer to engage people in one-on-one. If you want to engage with somebody specifically, and you want to do that during the meeting, you can actually out loud to the or in a private chat, you can make a comment such as, hey John, maybe we can meet later to discuss your project. Something like that. So I think it's important to get people to start engaging with you, and you can actually do that during the meeting. Jot down any follow-up opportunities you see. So if you see something, I usually, by the names of everybody who's introduced themselves, I put a little star by somebody that, oh, I want to follow up with what they said. If somebody just came to the country, I may want to just write in there, write a little note to them, say, hey, welcome to the USA. If somebody just started a new project, I might say, hey, I want to hear about your new project. If you find somebody is looking for a networking group, and I might say, oh, the SBRN is a great group to network at. So I might email them about that. So look for some specifics on reasons to get in touch with people. So those are my instructions for during a Zoom call. I hope that's helpful. And
Doug, before
so
we jump into follow-up, do you
yeah,
want to talk a little bit about the environment, the office that you might be in, the technology you might use, the lighting,
yes,
just some tips on that.
excellent. Yes, yeah. Projecting a good image is important. One of the things that's really important, that is the part that I have the hardest part, is look at the camera, because usually I'm looking down at everybody on my screen and not looking at the camera. And so what happens then is people don't see into your eyes. I've purchased a camera which I put on top of my extra monitor, and then I make sure that from my laptop to my monitor, I put the bigger the picture of everybody, so that way I'm looking at it. So if I was looking at my laptop, I'd be over here, and that just doesn't create a great image, because I'm not talking to you, now I'm talking to something over here. So I think that's important to if you can, get a camera. Mine was not very expensive. It's all relative, right? It was under $50, and it hooks right up. So it's terrific. The another thing is I've got a light here, so that is shining right in. One of the SBRN members, Mary Fisher, I think she calls it raccoon eyes. So what happens is with the light from above, it just looks like it's all dark here. So if you get a light here, it helps. I've got a new light that'll be arriving in a couple days that I think might even be better, because it'll be a little bit lower and will shine right in. So we'll see how that works. I'm still working on lighting. I'm working on a lot of these Zoom technologies, by the way. So I'm making it up. If anybody has any ideas on technology, let me know. There's also in this camera I bought, there are speakers, so microphones rather. So the microphones are right there, so it picks up more. And it's a little bit better camera than with quality, more pixels than in my laptop. Another thing that I do is I've got a little yellow sticky that I am sticking over my face. So that way I don't look at myself. I'm looking at Nancy most of the time, but I really should be looking at the camera. So my marketing director tells me to cover up Nancy too. So I'm making sure I'm looking at the camera because that's an important issue. Other technology is, it really has helped having two screens. I can't tell you, because over here I've got, if somebody says, oh, can I see that handout that you gave on networking, I can go over here and type it up and send it off. So I think having two screens is becoming more and more imperative. I also have a setup at home, because often meetings are either late or early. Most of them are early in the morning. And if I'm not at the office in time, then I will go ahead and do it from home. So I've got pretty much the same setup at home. Let me see, other technology. I think it's important to think about what's in your background. So I've got a painting in my background here at the office. Something that you don't see, but over here on the wall is a green screen. So when I'm doing shots for my subscription service, for the Wilder Business subscription, I have a green screen, so my marketing director is able to then put a virtual background. Virtual backgrounds are great. They don't always work with so many cameras. So and none of my laptop doesn't handle it well. So I don't use too many virtual backgrounds on Zoom calls. Um, so, and I think, the other thing is, what we're wearing is important, projecting the image. So, from the waist up, I try to look professional. I've got blue jeans on now. And that's one of the things I've noticed during the Zoom era is that so many people are wearing blue jeans now. So many men are wearing, and women too,
Yeah.
actually. And so it's rather amazing that from the waist down, we're not nearly as concerned as we used to be.
Well, because we don't see it, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
I would only add one thing in that if you
Yeah,
have a ceiling fan in the room where you're doing your Zoom calls, so make sure your ceiling fan is off because
yeah,
um, it's really distracting. So, all right, let's move
right.
on. So we've I think nailed down pretty much what to do during the Zoom call. So, what are your tips for after the Zoom call?
Yes. Well, as you can imagine, the number one instruction for after a Zoom event is to remember your overall purpose of networking is to meet people one-on-one. And so, again, review your list and schedule your follow-ups. Sometimes call follow-ups FUPS, F-U-P-S. So on my calendar, I'll go ahead and put in there Nancy Boyle FUP, which is just saying that I'm reminding myself to follow up with her and check on something. And I think the other thing is to do them as soon as possible. It is so hard because after a networking event, there's so many things to do, so many meetings to catch up on. We sometimes have one Zoom meeting after another Zoom meeting, and so it's so easy to lose the list and lose the thing. So I think it's important to, if you can put them on your calendar, that's so important, because that you're less likely to miss it if you put it on your calendar. So I think that's an important item. Schedule your follow-ups as soon as possible. Um, Another thing that you can do is research individuals on your list. So if you're about to follow up with somebody, you might look them up on LinkedIn or otherwise and find out some interesting information about them. It's so easy to stalk people now. So, so I just think it's important to discover as much as you can about people, unless it's going to delay you too much. If it's going to delay, I'd rather almost go sooner rather than later. If you're going to research them but then not follow up with them, it doesn't make any difference. So, but if you can research your list of FUPs, sometimes you can delegate this research, and because it can be very time consuming. You get on Facebook, you get on LinkedIn, and you could be there for hours and even forget where you are. So I don't know if any of you have problems like that, but sometimes I get lost in the research. On your list, you can jot down the reason or opportunity for the follow-up, and this will streamline your process. If there's different reasons I'm going to be following up with people, if I don't make a note of it, I may have to go back and think, and sometimes thinking takes me a long time. So what I'll do is I will write down, okay, ask this person about their new project. This person was asking about, he wants to meet somebody who sells bicycles. So, so any question like that, I try to make a note as to what's the reason for the follow-up. And the other thing is contacting the follow-ups. Sometimes it's better to call them, sometimes better to email, text, through LinkedIn. There's lots of social media messaging possibilities. I don't know that there's any one way that fits all because I'm finding that so many people have different ways of communicating. Some of it depends on the demographics of somebody, how old they are, or the psychographics, how old they think they are. And so it's sometimes hard to remember. It's sometimes hard to just say, okay, I'm going to only do phone calls. Some people just don't answer their phone, and then you leave a message, and so if you do leave a message, I would leave a message that says, hey, I saw you at the LinkedIn or at the Zoom meeting, and so I wanted to contact you and do some follow-up, and here's why I think follow-up might be fun or important for us. So contact them, meet one-on-one, and that can be in person, it can be by Zoom, it can be by phone. There's so many different possibilities, but I'm recommending meeting one-on-one. And remember, the idea of one-on-one is to find out specifics about people, what makes them tick. And often when I'm sorting people, I know that sounds sort of cold, but I sort people into one of maybe 5 or maybe several categories of about 5 different categories. One is it possible that they may be a resource, that I might be a resource for them or for their clients. So in other words, if they're looking to do networking, I do a lot of networking, so I can tell them where some of the great places to network, whether it's the SBRN or the Chamber of Commerce, or like Chamber of Commerce's, there's so many of them now, and the different organizations within the chamber or within SBRN, what committee do you want to be on? So, so I get those kind of questions, and I can be a resource for people, and often that's the reason that I might have a deeper relationship with them. So that's how I'm sorting people. Well, that's the first one. Another category that I might put people in is, might they be a referral source for me or for my clients? So in other words, might they be able to send work to me or to my clients? Another possibility, another category, is a potential client for me for somewhere down the road. And that's very ambiguous. That somewhere down the road they might become a client, and so I'm just trying to find out if that's even in the realm of possibility. And no pressure, because there's these other categories too. And then a fourth category is just a friend or an associate, somebody that I need to know, somebody that other people might need to know. So that's sort of a catch-all. But then if none of those work, maybe it's someone I should just discard. Rather than having a stack of business cards that aren't going anywhere, it'd be better to sort through them, find the ones that really just are not going to go anywhere for me at this point. So, if they don't want to develop a relationship with me, then it's probably not going to be a great source for me to pursue. So, again, I know that sounds cold, sorting people into different categories, but it really clarifies the future relationship. And if discarded, it eliminates the stack of acquaintances who I'll never contact again. So that's how I'm sorting people. And then also, once you follow up with somebody, once you have that one-on-one meeting, then the next thing is, what's next? Is there anything next? And for the future follow-up, so notate the file, notate the calendar or a spreadsheet with the details necessary for my tickler system or other organizational method. So whatever method you're using, make sure that you're using it, because there's so many times that we have a good meeting with somebody, we want to have more, we put it in the stack or the things we're going to think about later, and we end up not doing it. So so that's why I'm saying put it into your system. Staying organized and creating systems will help you with networking, because networking can become so complicated. So if you create a spreadsheet, even an Excel spreadsheet, that's better than no system at all. But there are a lot of systems that you can buy off the shelf that have all this networking into it. So so these are the instructions I have for after a Zoom event. How about that, Nancy?
That was great. So anybody in the audience, if you have questions, please type them in the question area. We do have one question from Janet. She says, can you help me set up a virtual background? I have not figured it out yet. So how does one go about doing that?
Well, in Zoom, I think it's easier in Zoom to do it. And because WebEx and some of the other ones have not made it easy for me, or at least I haven't figured out how to do it. Zoom is the one that works best for me. So in Zoom, yeah, you just I think it's next to the camera symbol. There's a little caret, and you have a drop down there, and one of them, I believe, is virtual background. So so it's really pretty easy. If you want to call me, I'll walk you through that process. We can do a Zoom call, our own Zoom call, and I'll walk you through that process. It's fun. In mine, when I do it, my head usually disappears and the background shows up, and it looks like I'm a ghost. So a lot of it depends on your camera and the background that you have. Good question.
All righty. Well, give it another minute, see if anybody else has a question. You know, most of what we've been talking about, Doug, is when you're going to someone else's networking meeting. But what if you want to set something up? If you want to put a group together, would you follow the same tips, or are there any other tips that would be different for when you're the one setting up the networking meeting?
Right. Yeah. So I think it's I went ahead and got a Zoom once all this started back in March. I got a Zoom account so I could set things up a little bit easier. Not only I got an account, but I paid for the ability to have the next level, and so you can have longer meetings with more people there. But what happens then is you can then, so a lot of the same principles apply. It's just that now you're the organizer. I'm thinking of our SBRN member, Steve Kaufman, who sent up the Corona Kaufman Connection group, and which is just amazing. He just started inviting people, and those people started inviting people, and now he's doing it practically all over the state of Florida or North Florida. And it was just something he decided to do. So anybody can do it. I recommend it, actually. I've set up a lot of networking groups pre-Zoom, before the Zoom came in, and yeah, I've got a bunch of lawyers that I'm Jacksonville Lawyers Roundtable that meet first Friday of every month at a restaurant, and been doing that since 2005. So it's easy to do, easy to set up. Highly recommend if you want to do networking, start inviting people to a group, and just start the group. You can have it be whatever kind of group you want. Sometimes they limit the people who can come, and sometimes they're very open to everybody. So you have to decide what's going to work best in your world. And so that's how, so networking, yeah, set up your own group. I love it. Love the content. If you have any questions on that, let me know, because I think it's important to gather the people that you want to talk to.
Okay. We've got another question here from Lorna. How do you structure activities during the Zoom networking meeting? Games, conversation topics, breakout rooms. How do you keep it from being boring?
Great question. I love that. So if you're an organizer or have influence over the organizer, I recommend an agenda. And during the agenda, we normally start off with something that's fun. Often I'll do self-introductions to begin with. If it's a reasonably small group of probably 20 to 30 people, it starts getting too large, and then you might want to have breakout rooms. But if it's a smaller group, you can do self-introductions, and then you can limit them. You can say, okay, I want you to spend 10 seconds on your self-introduction. And then usually I say something like, and tell me something that's happening remarkable in your life right at this moment. Or what kind of clients have you, what's the most recent client success story you've had? Or if it's another group, I might say, so where have you gone on vacation? When was the last time you went on vacation? Where'd you go? So, so there's lots of different games that you can play. And a game is just something that is fun, and you make up the rules for it. So make up some rules. And there's some people who are extra qualified to make up games, and they're a lot of fun. So you might tag somebody who has that creative spirit about them and ask them to help you make up a game. But that's important. And so usually I do that at the beginning. Sometimes if it's going to be a long conversation and there's going to be a lot of information, or there's going to be a speaker in the middle of the person, if the person's going to talk for more than 20 minutes, then I think it's important that somewhere in the middle you have something break it up, whether it's questions. If you're the organizer, you might even say, during the meeting, I'm going to ask you a question. And so don't be offended, speaker. So that way, what happens is it changes the flow. So as an organizer, you can make this thing fun. And then at the end, it's good to say, okay, so what was the best thing you got from this meeting? That's an easy one. Or when we meet next, what would be a great topic? So you can get people engaged. The more that you can have people engaged, the easier and the better it is.
Okay, so perhaps having some sort of discussion topic after you do the game or the introduction to get people communicating would keep them engaged.
Right, that's right. And I think it's the organizer's responsibility to be thinking about that at all times. How can I best keep people engaged? Another thing is, when you've got a speaker, it's good to tell the speaker, what are the parameters here? How do you like to conduct a meeting? If you want it to be more interactive, you might say, this is going to be a roundtable where I want you just to have an idea and then ask questions and then get feedback, and keep things light and airy, or you can go deep, but make sure you throw in something that gets people laughing so that it's fun.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, Doug, I want to thank you for sharing your networking expertise with us today. And how about you announce your phone number and your email address, so that way if people want to get in touch with you, if they have questions, then they can reach you.
Excellent idea. Yeah, my name is Doug Wilder. My business is Wilder Business Success, Inc. If you want to get in touch with me, there's several ways. You can email me at Doug, D-O-U-G, at wildersuccess.com, or you can call me at 904-705-4567. That's my cell phone. You can call me day or night. If you call me in the middle of the night, I won't answer it. Or if I'm in a meeting with somebody, I won't answer it, but you can leave a message. Or you can go to LinkedIn, find Doug Wilder, make sure you put Doug Wilder Jacksonville, not the ex-mayor of Richmond, Virginia, and ex-governor of Virginia his name was Doug Wilder also. So be careful of the other Doug Wilders out there. And not that they're bad, they're just different. And and then there's social media, Facebook. So there's lots of ways of contacting people now. So, but what I recommend is that you do contact me and let me know what you're thinking. I would love to, if you've got other thoughts on, gosh, here's something that you completely missed, Doug. I would love to hear that because I'm developing these instructions. I've done actually a blog on wildersuccess.com that has these tips. These instructions are before, during, and after a Zoom call. So feel free to access the blog to see what to have as a backup.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for attending. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Doug, thank you. I appreciate it. And join us next Wednesday when have our next webinar. And that one's going to be interesting. It's called Leveling the Playing Field, and it's about reaching a demographic that a lot of people may not have thought about because of the communication element, but that is certainly a very strong demographic to work with, and that's the deaf community. So next week will be leveling the playing field. So without further ado, I wish you all a great day. Doug, thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Great, thank you. Bye-bye.